Ladies and gentlemen, we are waiting for two excellent speakers, the astronaut Dr. Proctor, Sian Proctor, and before that we had another excellent speaker and distinguished personality among us is His Excellency Sheikh Modibo Diarra, former Prime Minister of Mali, Republic of Mali, Chairman Microsoft 2006 to 2011, Chairman Microsoft Africa. His Excellency Dr. Sheikh Diarra is a chairman of ALN. His Excellency Sheikh Diarra is a Malian engineer, businessman, politician, and was the acting Prime Minister of Mali from April to December 2012. His Excellency is a goodwill ambassador of ICESCO and UNESCO, and also served as the president of African Virtual University based in Kenya. In 1989, His Excellency joined the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California, a center of NASA, excellent center of NASA. There, as a navigator, he participated in various missions, which includes Magellan to Venus, Ulysses to the Sun's poles, Galileo to Jupiter, and the Mars Observer and Mars Pathfinder. He later headed NASA's Mars Outreach Program. He studies mathematics, physics, and analytic mechanics at the University Pierre at Marie Curie. Following this, he completed a master's in aerospace engineering at Harvard University in Washington, D.C., and completed his PhD also in mechanical engineering at Harvard University. In his distinguished career and decorations, one of the inciting is that he was voted by the African public as one of the 100 Africans of 20th century in June Africa magazine. Your Excellency, we are here very much eager to listen about your experience at NASA and Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Please, the floor is yours, sir.
Your Excellency, Director General of ICESCO, Your Excellencies, Cabinet Ministers, distinguished guests, I came here thinking that when we talk about panel, that we're going to be sitting around here making interventions and remarks of 1 minute or two. I didn't know that we had to make a speech. But nevertheless, I am delighted to be here today, and I thank ICESCO for giving me the opportunity to take part in such an important endeavor and to be able to share a little bit of my experience at NASA. I will not talk about my time as Prime Minister or as President of Microsoft Africa, even though that part is a little relevant. I will focus rather on my work at NASA. I started working at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, in Pasadena, California, in 1989. And during that time, the agency was building spacecrafts like Galileo and Cassini. These are billion-dollar spacecrafts that would take us 7 years to build them and maybe another 10 years to fly them through different gravity assists to, Saturn. And I believe only this year, finally, Cassini mission came to an end. So it was not unheard of for somebody to start their career at NASA working on one project and finishing the career on the same project. But I had the privilege and the pleasure of being at NASA when Dan Goldin was named the administrator of the agency. He came out with an idea telling us that from that day forward, we are no longer going to build those kind of spacecraft. And he has a simple philosophy. Whatever we want to do a mission, whatever we want to build, we have to do it faster, better, and cheaper. And this faster, better, and cheaper approach to space exploration enabled us to do tremendous things in terms of innovation. The very first innovative things that we saw that we have to do was how do you build a team to be able to meet the challenges of faster, better, and cheaper. And suddenly we have seen at NASA that if you want those missions to be successful, to be built faster, to be built cheaper, to be better, that you have to put at the realm of those missions the youngest people coming from the university, because those people were not afraid of failure and they thought that everything was possible. And then have the most experienced people as their advisors to tell them, based on the history of the agency, what worked and what didn't work in the past. And this is how I find myself as a navigator of the Mars Pathfinder mission, which was the first one of this faster, better, and cheaper. If you remember, in the 1970s, NASA has gone to Mars with the Viking spacecraft. Those two spacecraft cost about $3.2 billion. And they went and landed on the planet Mars on legs, and with robot arms that actually take the dirt and the rocks to search for life without any mobility on the surface. So if you saw a rock that was 1 inch farther from the reach of the robot arm, that was too bad, you couldn't get it. So we came out with Pathfinder, giving it a mobility to be able to move on the surface of Mars. And instead of costing $3.2 billion, that mission cost us about $450 million. It took us about 3.5 years to build it and to put the team together. And in the process, we learned not only how we put a team together, but we learned what kind of profile to give to a budget for these missions. Because in order to do faster, better, and cheaper, you have to actually build, as you build a spacecraft, the subsystem, as you build them, you have to integrate them and test them together before you go to the next step. So that means that you have to have the biggest part of your budget first and available instead of trickling down with time. So we learn the kind of profile that we give a budget to be able to do this kind of mission. But the most important thing, since today we are talking about how do we prepare the workforce for the next generation of workforce for the space exploration, is what we have learned in terms of outreach and education. For the first time, Congress has required that any mission that NASA will do had an outreach program that will reach out to the community, but at the same time bring the universities and the schools on board with the agency, so together we can work together and transfer the knowledge, the know-how to the schools and to the students, and give them also this love for science that we all had. And I was fortunate because I was educated in Mali, which is a French system. I was educated in Paris and then in the United States. And because of this, the combination of these three, I was taken in additional duty to become the director of the Mars Outreach Program. And using NASA, NASA television channel, was able to build programs across the 50 states where all the schools of America, all the teachers, distinguished teachers, the universities, all will participate regularly into training program, in outreach program that enable us to actually connect them directly to what we were doing in the laboratory in building the Mars Pathfinder spacecraft and testing it, and at the same time getting them involved in doing the calculation all the way from small level like third, fourth grade, learning simple mathematics and concepts all the way to the university level where they help us build some of the instruments that flew on the spacecraft. And as I came here today, Director General of ICESCO, and as your goodwill ambassador, I had a vision, seeing ICESCO spearheading this partnership that Minister sitting to your right talk about between the states, between the universities, between the private sector. I see ICESCO spearheading a very robust and at the same time a very dynamic and live outreach program that will actually involve all of the universities, all of the public sector of the different country members, and also the private sector into that outreach program. But it should not be only at the university level. This has been our experience during the Mars Pathfinder and the Faster, Better, and Cheaper. Any outreach program has to extend its arm all the way to the elementary school, because that's where the seed is actually planted to be able to actually understand science and technology. So I would see this institution spearheading a very robust outreach program that will involve all of our countries that are doing, how you call it, Professor Ouattara just learned here that Morocco has already launched 2 satellites. If we had such an outreach program that connects people, then this thing will not happen again. We will move much faster as we go along. And now, based on the type of education and the type of community that we people are building around to be able to take advantage of science and technology, they are putting into place educational system that actually extend the whole life long of an individual. So we need to make sure that the outreach program has that characteristic as well. If we do that, I believe that we will be contributing to actually building a very strong workforce for our nations in the future. And I will conclude by just saying that when I left NASA in 2003 to go build the African Virtual University in Kenya, at that time, for every dollar that the taxpayer have ever invested in the agency has returned $27 back to the taxpayers. So it is a very, very high leverage area, and it is an area where all the knowledge come together, whether it is mechanical engineering for the propulsion systems, all the way to electrical engineering, to attitude control. You find an area where all the subsystems play a role, and it is really definitely, in addition to the possibilities that it gives, a way that people can actually cross-fertilize, and at the same time, a tremendous area of innovation. I thank you for your attention.